Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. And I will be speaking about the personalized supply chain. I think it's, obviously, as always, this is a very exciting event, a huge amount of very exciting science that's happening and progressing really fast. And it's really our job to make sure that all of this incredible science is delivered in the right way, in time, and in spec to the patients all over the world. So what do we really think about first when we're looking at the preparedness of the companies that we're working with? So first of all, of course, as discussed on many different sessions, is to prepare the market, really to identify your centers, how you're going to enroll the patients, how you're going to engage the patients, how you're going to give them the information about the clinical trials. And support throughout the clinical trial, and very importantly, after for the long-term follow-up. The second is prepare the product, and this is where very early on we encourage the companies think big, think commercial. I like to say that the decisions you make in phase 1 will come to haunt you when you come to commercialize, right? So it's really about the right partners and the right decisions at the time. And then prepare the company. Again, think commercial, think beyond just phase 1, think about your go-to-market strategy, think about the regions that you would like to commercialize. We see more and more that the regions where you go to will ultimately become your competitive advantage, especially for those companies that are competing in the same indication, for example, or competing for the same types of diseases. So the regions you go to will become really very important. In terms of the growth, obviously, this is a fast-growing market. We will, 2021, really see the explosion of gene therapies, which is, again, not surprising. We heard many sponsors focusing almost exclusively on the gene therapies, and we, of course, at Marken will see this the trend to continue to grow. The financing, even though flattish in 2022, was growing double-digit year-on-year for the last 5 years, and this is now over $23 billion industry. Interestingly, cell and gene companies are acquiring huge amount of GMP space, and we're really seeing the trends with, this area on the West Coast and Philadelphia really becoming a hotspot for cell and gene clinical trial manufacturing, but also from the thought leadership and some of the most interesting innovation coming out from those regions. So now thinking really about the supply chain piece, this is the network that Marken built over the many years that we have been supporting large pharma and growing biotechs with bringing their cell and gene products to life. And the network that we build, it's all around the patient. This is really very important for us to make sure that we're as close as possible. And what I mentioned at the beginning, think big and think commercial, because now a lot of you in early stages, so you have one patient. This patient is in the US, so running your trial will maybe look something like this. You have a patient, you have a site, and you have your CMO, you have in-house manufacturing. So the product will move in a very sustained way. We will, of course, everyone will have their eyes on this, but then there is a lot has to do with the manufacturing. We're seeing a big move into what we call even just-in-time manufacturing for cell and gene products, where the raw materials for cell and gene will move at different speed. And some parts of raw material need to be delivered to CMO in less than 48 hours. To enable patient dosing. So all of this needs to kind of all happen in real time as patient is waiting for the treatment. So while all of this is happening, the therapy is finally ready to move. It's moving back to the site and has been administered to the patient. But what if this happens, right? Of course, this is where all of us want to be. We want to have these patients to be all over the world. So the supply chain that I have just shown now need to apply to all of these patients. So early planning will be critically important. And as we have come and supported a lot of our clients through early clinical all the way to commercialization, and now we very successfully delivering their commercial product all around the world. We really looked at the network and thought, okay, how do we optimize and really be the best we can be, the most efficient we can be in building the supply chain for our sponsor client? So the first thing we looked at is a heat map. So we started at 2021, and we said, where is the most of the patients will be coming from? And these are the heat maps, as you can see. US, of course, is a big chunk, but Europe and Asia very quickly catching up through the end of 2020, 2021, and up until today, Asia and Europe becoming a huge market from the patient. This is where the patient will come from. This is where most of the AIF or patient material is being moved to. And then we looked at the deliveries. So where are the most of the CMOs are? Where is this manufacturing happening? And trends are, of course, very similar. Again, the European, and look at Asia, huge amount of manufacturing is happening in Asia. This also includes, of course, very important part of raw materials, right? What I've mentioned before. For us, really understanding where the raw material, all of the critical raw material will come from is critically important to the success of therapy. With the supply chain disruptions that we have been seeing, ensuring that the risk assessment is done to every single raw material vendor you have that you deem critical to delivering and manufacturing the final product is the risk assessment we will want to perform. To make sure that we can deliver. So is supply chain really complex for cell and gene? Okay, let's have a look. So yes. So a lot going on all the way from the manufacturing, all the way from very early sequencing, all the way how we get to drug product, fill finish, and final product. So these are this is typically the way that we work with some of our clients from very early understand what are the manufacturing steps, where the touch points are, where those critical risks are in the supply chain, and how can we help to mitigate those risks. It's not uncommon for us for each of the leg of the journey, some call it, in some cases it's a cell journey, in some cases it's a patient journey. We really look at least 6 options. So we would look at plan A, right? So where everything goes perfect, as it always does. It goes plan A, but we have plan B and C when we're always ready for something to go wrong. And those, the way that we activate the contingencies are being done in a very structured way. Then, of course, looking at the cell journey, mapping out for us the cell journey, which means the journey of the patient product all the way through a manufacturing process, whether it's autologous or allogeneic treatment, is very important for us. Mapping those temperatures, understanding the part of what we call of manufacturing supply chain, so CMOs you use, CDMOs, the temperature, the way that the product will transform in terms of whether it's going to be vials or bags and how they will move and at which temperature will become critical for us to build these kind of supply chains for our patients. For our sponsors. This is another example, and this is example of the European launch. So for the therapies that is manufactured in the US, where the manufacturing is only done in the US, but patients are now in Europe. So we really need to work through the way and what we call gateway in Europe. In Marken case, it's Germany, where we will have our QP releasing the final product into the European Union, and after that it will go into short-term mid-term or long-term storage. Short-term can be anywhere between few hours to a day, and the QP process can be anywhere from a full-blown QP release to light touch release, where we know in some pharma QPs are very protective. This is a very important part. So they will want to be involved almost to the last stage, and before our QPs are putting their signatures on the release. And really, that's the what we call a gateway model for Europe. And after that, after the long or short or midterm hold, the final distribution will be done within Europe with Marken or without using Marken logistics or not using Marken logistics. But really the options are there for final mile delivery. A lot of holds are happening at this stage because we need to make sure that the patient is ready. A lot of them need to have a treatment, in many cases chemo, round or something that enables them to be ready to take the therapy. So this is what determines in many cases how long we're going to hold, and if the product is CAR-T, so patient A to patient A, or if it's a one-to-many therapy. This is another example where we have, with the sponsor, where the manufacturing is done both in Europe and the U.S. So these supply chains would look somewhat similar. Of course, typically it's one CMO, but we also see here might be added some of the raw materials that might be coming either centrally from the US or from Asia in many cases, India, China. We see a lot of the raw materials come from those areas. So they would be supplied either centrally to one of the CMOs or broken down in both regions. So here, how do we make that happen? I think that the most important decision that we made several years ago is to carve out cell and gene, even within our structure, and everything Marken does is super critical, and it's super patient-centric, and it's super, super urgent. But cell and gene is a really different beast, right? So even within our world, which is everything is urgent, we carve out essentially a company within a company, where everything is truly urgent. The AF kit is urgent, the raw material is urgent, viral vector is urgent, every single thing is super urgent, and we put a structure in place, not only from the oversight perspective and the tower perspective, but even the operations team that works on the cell and gene is completely separate to anything else that we do for normal clinical trial, for standard clinical trial. So account management is run, dedicated by cell and gene project managers. So these are the teams that do nothing else. They set up these kind of flow charts that we discussed with many clients. We're working on the portfolio basis. So for many biotech, we would be a sole provider to their entire pipeline. So the flow charts that I showed, let's say they have 7 programs. Each program will have this kind of flow chart. So what for us is also very interesting is kind of merge them. So you layer these maps, right, one or another, and you begin to see synergies, and you begin to see area where potentially there are gaps, but also many areas where we could find efficiencies. So this is where our account management comes in. The network, again, built based on the heat map intelligence of over 7 years that we have been in a very dedicated way supporting cell and gene industry. Chain of custody and identity is controlled. We have a manual process, which we can do, of course, if we need to, but we are very big on making sure there is an integrations in place, because that's, of course, a critical component. Quality, this is a GMP material. We need to comply, especially for final product. We need to comply with GMP standards in our supply chain. So we have a dedicated QA team that will do that. And lane assessment. So I mentioned before, there is no surprises. Nothing comes just comes into the network. every single thing comes in, enters the network in a very pre-planned and deliberate way. And by everything, I mean the kit, the raw material, obviously the final therapy, but that is no surprises, right? And these are something that we share with our sponsors. We want to be very transparent in terms of where the risks are and what we do to mitigate those risks. So in summary, we really, again, encourage to have a supply chain as a critical path. When you think about bringing your incredible therapies to light, think about it as a competitive advantage. We see more and more pharma beginning to think that way, especially, again, when they're in competing therapeutic indications. Selective vendors who will take you through commercialization. Any changes from clinical to commercial will result in some significant delays. And we see this, luckily or unluckily, we had many years to learn, right? Some of the programs we worked on had some significant issues, frankly, with the design that had to be changed in phase 3. And that was very painful for pharma. It would result anywhere between 6 to 8 months holds and delays just to enable flexibility into the supply chain and delivery of the final product. And consider the partner that's agnostic. I think this is really important that you don't link yourself to a, let's say, specific system or specific types of packaging. Always think about that, when you have 3,000 patients, 4,000 patients, paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars for your therapy, you cannot have any delays and any shortage in any supply. So don't lock yourself in unnecessarily. Keep an open mind and remain agnostic and use the partner who thinks the same way. Thank you. If no more questions, we will be at the booth. If there is any questions, please let me know.